Hi everyone, let's keep moving with our Google Ads course. So, what's next? Let's get into ad analysis. Traditionally, the 10% of actions that give 90% of the results. Analyzing someone else's ads and analyzing the ads we set up using our playlist are two totally different tasks. Because when you're analyzing for someone else, the first thing you look at is whether the ads are showing in the right regions. You look to see if there's just one ad created for a whole pile of completely different keywords. That's a trash setup. And basically, if it's done like that, you can see immediately that it's bad. And there's no point in analyzing further. You just need to tear it all down and start from scratch. The only thing you can lean on there is, again, to go through all the search terms that were used and look at the negative keyword list. But right now, we're gonna see how to analyze proper advertising. That is, the kind we made. First and foremost is going through search terms and creating new negative keywords. We dedicated 3 separate lessons to this, and that's exactly what we were doing there. Today, we're gonna look at other metrics. The first thing to pay attention to, obviously after negative keywords, is the status limited by budget. Our ads ran for less than 3 days on low bids, and Google didn't have time to gather stats. That's why I made you a screenshot from one of the working accounts. Here we're advertising stair railings in Canada. Although that's not important, there's a limited by budget status here. And it's on a red background. This label can be on a yellow background or it can be on red like here. A red background means Google is just screaming at us to pay attention, damn it. This means it's catastrophically short on budget. In our case, with 23 Canadian dollars a day at the bids we set. This tells us the ad could be showing much more often. As it stands, it might show the ad once, then not show it 2 times, and so on. That means there's a high probability we're missing out on potential clients. Ads should always be showing. Imagine that out of 10 visitors to the site, 1 might become a client, and 9 are just looking. And for that 1 person, your ad might not show up at all, so there should be no budget limitations. Especially on a red background. If the background is yellow, the budget limitation isn't particularly catastrophic in Google's opinion. By the way, if this status isn't there at all, it doesn't mean we're showing all the time. It simply says that Google thinks it's doing fine as is. Let's just click on the status limited by budget and see what it offers us. It recommends we raise the daily budget from the current $23 to $64. It also estimates how much the number of clicks, cost per click, and expenses will increase. In some cases, if conversion statistics have already been accumulated, it'll write the expected change in conversions. But this is all too approximate. I don't advise trusting this information blindly. Also, never apply its recommendations, especially on automated strategies, which we'll talk about later in a separate lesson. With a strong change in budget, the ad goes into learning mode, and if it was giving you good results, you might lose them during the new learning period. You raise the budget smoothly by about 15% every 3 days, and no more often, ideally once a week. This is maximally safe in terms of not breaking the learning phase. When we have clean traffic flowing and everything's good with conversions and sales, we'll send this limit to the moon. That is, even if physically there's so much traffic that we can spend $1,000 a day, and we set a budget of $10,000, it doesn't mean we'll spend that much. Imagine you set, for example, a $100,000 budget. Google won't just spend it for no reason. Search advertising is a keyword. Every keyword is an athlete standing in the starting blocks waiting for the words. Attention march. What's attention march for us? It's when a person types into the search bar, in our case in Google, exactly the query that matches the keyword we have. And at that moment our key showed up, our ad appeared. But if a person doesn't enter this query, they're all in the starting blocks. And that's it, nothing happens. Therefore, in some narrow topics where there are really few requests, no matter what you set here, what click prices, what bids, no matter what budgets you set, it'll all be basically pointless. The most garbage results, just terrible, are from those who advertise like this. Launched ads, didn't get a result, said, oh, everything's bad, it's a miss. Then, well, I'll try again, launched again. advertised a bit, again no result, and there won't be one. Here, it's all about consistency. In the lesson on bids, I gave an example that you can spend $500 and get 0 leads, or spend $1,000 and get 6 leads, because everything works in waves, and you need to advertise constantly to catch that exact wave. Anyway, okay, we pay attention to this recommendation, take it into account, but we don't press any buttons here, because when everything's good for us, again we'll send this to the moon. But there's another option. We can simply lower the bids. It shows us the budget at current bids, and when it suggests raising the budget, it means our ad isn't showing all the time, that it's being typed into the search bar more often than we're showing up. There's also the status limited by bid strategy. On manual bids, it means the bids are too low, and that by raising them, we can show for a larger number of keywords and/or in higher positions. For automated strategies, this most often means you need to raise the target CPA. I say most often because automated strategies vary. If I click on the status limited by bid strategy, I'll see its recommendation. Well, here. It suggests setting the target CPA, in this case around 140 Canadian dollars. But along with this action, it'll switch you to another bid strategy. And when switching to a new strategy, you can set a target CPA immediately. This will be in the lesson on automated bid strategies. Therefore, don't click apply. I'm just closing this window. It'll absolutely everywhere try to slip you all kinds of optimization, like right here. When you see plus 7.8% here, it seems like you need to apply it, but no. We take everything into account, but we make the decision ourselves. All these numbers are mostly just pulled out of thin air. I'll show you this clearly closer to the end of the lesson. Now let's start digging into the metrics. Here we see how many times ads from each specific ad campaign were shown in the given period. Here, how many clicks there actually were. And next is CTR. CTR is the ratio of impressions to clicks. Actually, you don't even need to put it in a separate column. By the way, regarding columns, we'll look further in a moment. If you don't have some set, don't worry, all of this is ahead. You can skip adding it because we already see impressions and clicks and can calculate CTR. Well, for example, I'll take a calculator and divide our 27 clicks by 396 impressions and multiply by 100. Well, like to get a percentage. Here, if we round up, it'll be 6.82%. I got the same sum. That is basically this CTR column isn't particularly important in terms of information. It's simply more visual for us. Easier not to calculate in our heads, but just to see it. But when people say, I have an awesome CTR, everything's super there. The CTR itself isn't even that interesting. You see the CTR relative to impressions. And in our case, if it suggests we increase the daily budget, then that tells us that most likely impressions and consequently clicks could have been higher. And correspondingly, figuratively speaking, we showed up to 400 people there, but could have shown up to 1,000. And for example, 27 people came to us who wouldn't have bought anyway. These aren't clients, but possibly exactly those who were ready to order, wherein those other 500 potential impressions we didn't get. Therefore, you need to show up always. Better at lower bids, but always. Otherwise, it's an accident. We look at statistics for 3 days and there wasn't a single conversion. But if you rewind the video a bit, you'll see that in 1 day there was a conversion at a price of less than $18. When we don't show up always, we get unstable results. Let's go back to our account. By the way, a CTR in the area of 10% is considered good on search. Why it's so low in our case, I'll of course explain later. Now we're gonna add columns with you. To start, I'll hide the left menu and slightly reduce the existing columns in size so more fits on one screen. Now I press columns, choose modify columns. There's a lot of interesting stuff here, but right now I'll choose exactly what we're gonna use with you. Performance. We're interested in impressions, clicks, CTR, cost, average CPC. We'll also take impression share, absolute top, and impression share top. Conversions. We select conversions, cost per conversion and conversion rate. Again, here it's the same as CTR. Conversions alone are enough for us. We can calculate the cost per conversion anyway, because we see in the column how much we spent. Well, figuratively, we spent say $20 on this campaign. Got, for example, 2 conversions, then we understand anyway that a conversion costs on average $10. With conversion rate, it's the same thing, it's just a percentage ratio. Further, basically, you can turn on absolutely everything here, but you'll just have a long table. It'll get in your way. You can arrange everything in the same order as mine, so it's easier for you to navigate for the first time. But generally this order doesn't matter. You can press apply, or before that click on save your column set and give it some name. Then you'll be able to save this view of tables and easily switch between saved ones later. I won't do that. I'll uncheck the box and press apply. So look, by default I sort all this by cost, because when I have many campaigns I log in and see a large expense, and that means this campaign requires my priority attention. If a lot of money went there, I need to see immediately how effectively it's being spent. Then I move on to those where, let's say like here, there were practically no impressions, and I see what went wrong. In this case there were no impressions here, due to the lack of cross-negative keywords. This was all done on purpose to clearly show you why this is needed and how important it is. There was a separate lesson on this topic. I hope you're not skipping anything and going through everything in order from the first lesson. Only this way can you get results and become a pro like me. Let's look at these 2 metrics. Impression share absolute top is position number 1. That is the one that's the very highest, nowhere higher, search bar, and immediately your ad. Impression share top. If you don't have the goal of standing exactly in first place, if you have 0 right here, but here you're near 100%, then those are excellent metrics. You can make good money like that. Look, remember in past lessons, we went through keywords and saw a lot of junk. Look, when we sort through keywords well, and we don't show up for all sorts of crap, our CTR will grow. Because people will see exactly the ads that interest them. CTR will get higher, click price lower, but absolute top impression share and top impression share, the numbers in these 2 columns will go down. Why will they go down? Because right now we were showing up on top for irrelevant user queries. And if our competitors aren't idiots, then these words that we hadn't added yet, they already have in their negatives and they weren't showing up for them. Accordingly, for some impressions, we simply weren't competing with anyone, and that's why we get such positions. But if we end up lower, no big deal. At the same time, again, if we're advertising with a low click price showing at the bottom, we have a low CTR, and we're like, oh bad, somewhere they told me a good CTR is 10, and I have a CTR of 5%. Oh, why is that? Well, because look at where you're showing and for what queries. Possibly you're just showing at the bottom, that's all. And this is basically a normal strategy in topics where there's a lot of traffic. By the way, some affiliate marketers do exactly this. They make ads for informational content, which is very cheap, showing somewhere at the bottom. There's a lot of traffic for info content. People click through, and then on their site there are banners with ads. By the way, when you click on such banners, Google pays half the click cost specifically to the site owners, which is why webmasters are so eager to place these banners on their sites. We have only one conversion, which is insufficient for a full analysis, as one can draw false conclusions. But when there's a normal budget and we have at least 3 or 4 conversions, we can perfectly see why this campaign performs better and the other worse. The more data, the more truthful picture we see. Nevertheless, conversions are our main metric when analyzing ads. And further along in the lesson, I'll constantly talk about this while showing you various reports. Okay, let's move on. Let's look at auction insights. It's right here. You can also highlight a specific campaign, or all at once I'll take search Miami pedicure. It had few clicks and therefore it's well suited for an example. And up top there's the auction insights button. I click on it. The same report opened for me as if I'd selected insights and reports and clicked auction insights. But there's one difference. I'm showing you so you don't get confused. Up top, it says that all campaigns are selected and we can choose a specific one. But I'm not doing that. We already have the specific campaign Search Miami Pedicure selected right here at the filter level, showing so you don't get confused. And for it, we have very few statistics. It can't be that we have only 2 competitors. By the way, when you see google.com among competitors, it doesn't mean Google itself is advertising. It means someone is simply advertising themselves on the google.com domain. This could be a standard business card site on Google or a point on the map. We aren't shown the specific pages the ads go to, we can only see the domain. You can remove the filter and look at all campaigns. But I'll open another account, for example, where there's more data. Here we advertise wedding photography in Hawaii. Now I'll comment on all the columns for you. To start, I'll tell you who these competitors even are. These are the ones advertising in the same location as us for similar keywords. And so, impression share is the number of auctions won divided by the number of impressions that could have happened. That is, we don't have 100% here, which means we don't show up always. Remember, I said that CTR is relative to those impressions we received. But there are specifically queries for which we could have shown. That is, basically, we can improve our opportunities, but that'll be later, when the rest of the ad setup is well honed and the traffic is clean. Overlap rate is how often our ad appeared together in the same results with these guys here. The higher the percentage, the higher our degree of keyword overlap with them. Position above rate is how often a competitor's ad appeared above ours. Top of page rate refers to those first 4 lines under the search bar. Absolute top of page rate is how often the ad shows in the very top position. Basically, initially, look only here. Over a distance, it's easier to identify the leader. That is, when over a long period of time, half a year or a year, a clear leader in spending emerges, then we need to look at what they're doing that allows them such expenses. The fact that someone is higher than everyone for 3 days isn't an indicator at all. Maybe someone just freaked out and set high bids for a couple of days. But if it's months in a row, then that's systematic work. We analyze the sites of such competitors, try to understand their business model. And here, for example, this littlechapel.com clearly adopted a strategy to show higher than everyone. That is, they try to stand as high as possible, meaning most likely they have the highest bids. Well, and we, with our bids, are clearly trailing behind. 8 competitors are located above us. You definitely won't become market leaders like that. But nevertheless, in niches with a lot of traffic, it's a normal conscious strategy to advertise in lower positions with a not high click price. Outranking share, this metric sums up data from the previous columns of this table, so I don't particularly use it. These numbers say in how many cases my ads won the auction against a specific competitor. It's around 10% everywhere here, which means I was cooler in only 1 case out of 10, but this is understandable anyway, from the previous columns of auction statistics. So I don't pay special attention to it, as I see the picture anyway. If we've already cleaned the traffic, everything's good for us. We're ready to increase the budget, but we have few leads. We look at auction statistics, look at competitors' sites. How is it done for them? As I said earlier, advertising is just traffic. Good advertising is clean traffic. But advertising in itself doesn't sell. Your site, your offer sells. Auction statistics will help you identify the real leader. And you'll be able to tweak your business by doing an analysis of this very competitor. Okay, I'm returning back. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. See the range, always pay attention to what range you have selected. Because sometimes something else is selected and you're analyzing who knows what. A very cool thing, date range selection for comparison. Let's say I take last week from Sunday to Saturday. And most often I analyze an already working ad campaign once a week on Sundays or Mondays. Because if you make changes often, you simply can't understand what exactly influenced the result. Did this influence it or that? Or maybe your ads have nothing to do with it at all, but some external events, like the weather or people are just in a good mood. Therefore, we make major changes to the campaign on Sundays or Mondays and wait a week to see exactly the cycle. And here you can check the compare box 2 weeks ago, or the previous year. I press apply at the bottom right. We take any metric, let's say cost. Click, and we see what we have now and what was a week ago. What's the change and in percentage ratio. And here I selected the previous year, and I'm comparing what is now and this same time period, but a year ago. There are situations when someone tells me, oh, look at the ads, something's happening, leads are low. And I say, and what happened last year in this same time interval? Yeah, seems it was low too. I take a look a year ago, 2 years ago, and see that it's simply stupidly not the season. Ah, well, everything's normal. And we understand from history that from such and such month, or from such and such date, leads will start for us again. This cycle repeats from year to year. Again, there are all sorts of external events, but overall everything is very cyclical. Good, we close this matter. Remove it. Let's go now look at ad schedule. Here it is. Remember, this is what we set up with you. In our case, there's little to analyze here because there aren't enough stats here. But overall, everything's like everywhere else. You go to columns and take the columns you need. For example, turn on conversions. Press apply, and here they are, conversions. Also, to make it more convenient, click right here, choose a specific campaign and look at data purely for it. Normal statistics is from a month. Everything less than a month is of course trivial. Well, and there should be at least 100 clicks specifically for some specific campaign or for some certain period of time to have enough data for a full analysis. With a large volume of traffic, you can even analyze the situation in one day. If you drove 10,000 people there in a day, then basically that's a sufficient indicator to rely on. Our 6 clicks are absolutely nothing, but this is quite enough for me to clearly show you what and how to analyze and what changes to make based on this analysis. Here we're shown when exactly our ad was showing. Here you can choose data for visual display. Right now clicks are selected, I'll switch to impressions. All data is below in the table, but the graph is very convenient for clarity. If I hover the mouse cursor here, I see that on Thursday, from 8 AM to 5 PM, there were 39 impressions on the selected days for the selected campaign. I scroll a little lower to see the data in the table. If I see a time in which I have few conversions, but costs are high, I can click on the pencil icon and lower the bits. I'm not changing anything specific here. I'll highlight, for example, night time, that is non-working hours, press edit. And right here you can, for example, remove some of them. That is, when we remove a certain time interval. During this time interval ads don't show at all. But I suggest simply making bid adjustments. Click change bid adjustments. I never use increase, since you can confuse yourself when you have one upper click price limit set. But in fact more is being deducted and you can't understand what's happening. Therefore I use only decrease. Let's say by 50%. Below he gives an example. If you're not sure if you want to apply this or not, you can press preview and it'll show you which campaigns will be affected, what time is affected. I'll press cancel, I don't need it. In the insights and reports section, I'll go to when and where ads showed, and right there switch to the when ads showed tab. This report is similar to the one we looked at before. But before we looked at show times that we set manually. If you didn't do this in advance, then you don't have that report. But this one is always there. Now we see every hour of every day of the week. Sometimes this can be useful, but in most cases it's inconvenient to analyze. Therefore we switch from day and hour to day. If we advertise, say, a whole year, then we would have very useful data here on which day of the week there was the most activity. Obviously you turn on the column with conversions and align with them. You can also select hour. That way you'll see the most active hours. Based on this data, you can create an ad schedule, which I showed how to edit and make changes there. Maybe you need to try to offer people something more interesting at other hours or days. Some kind of promotion, like in cafes, at a time when there are few visitors. Some dish is free there, something like that can be done here. Because it happens, well, in a certain period, yes, a large load, for example, on your managers. and for you to simply distribute the load. Sometimes it's more profitable to give people, for example, a discount at a certain time than to hire a couple more managers. Well, all this needs to be calculated. Let's switch to the Devices tab. By the way, I usually put impressions immediately in the columns and then clicks. For me, this is a more logical order. People go through the funnel exactly like that. What Google suggests by default, I don't like very much. But this is just a matter of taste. As I already said when we were setting up initially, no need to make any adjustments for devices. We look at what we get in fact. Sometimes it happens that you have a ton of requests on phones, you're like, wow, cool, keeping it, and on computers, nobody at all. Well, basically, the ratio of impressions on phones and computers is somewhere like this. Look, I have 26 on computers, 197 on phones. That's how it turns out. And it happens that there are few requests on the computer. You don't necessarily need to turn off the ads. Possibly you need to lower bits temporarily and look, what's wrong with your site? What's wrong with it? Maybe there's some glitchy version there. Or mostly people come to you directly from messengers. Yes, then it's understandable. It's more convenient from a phone. Or one more option. When again people just call you, just take out the phone. And then it's understandable that no conversion will be displayed for you here. Therefore, be careful. Don't draw false conclusions. False conclusions are also bad. But if something needs regulating, also hover, press change. Well, and sort of you already know what to do with this. Next, report audiences. This is what Google really very strongly advises us, to edit these audience segments. But I don't bother with this again in such specific topics. In the keywords and targeting section, you can go to audience segments, then press add audience segment. Here, just for an example, I'll click campaign level audience segment and choose all campaigns. Right here, these very segments are selected. This allows narrowing the audience. If I select the audience segment banks online, then Google will show for the query nail salon only to those who are in its banks online audience. I just took this for an example, the first thing that came to hand. You can also press add audience segments right here in the interface, but I extremely don't recommend doing this. We'll add them in one lesson, when we'll be setting up ads on the display network. Scroll lower, and we see the age of those people who visited us. You can press show table. Now we're looking at the campaign Search Miami Nail, broken down by ad groups inside it. You can go up to the top and choose a specific ad group, but I won't do that. Absolutely in all tables. If you're missing something, press columns, then modify columns, and choose what you need to add. For example, add conversions, or swap impressions and clicks. I'll name it one and press save and apply. I'll collapse the left menu so everything fits on the screen. Always sort data in the table by cost. We see that we have more expenses falling on the age 65 plus. Are these people your audience? Do they convert well? I'll highlight this age. Basically, even without highlighting, you can click on the green circle next to it, and an opportunity will appear to exclude this age from the selected ad group. Having highlighted the age, we can click a bit higher on edit, and here there will already be more options. Most often, we use change bit adjustments. This is in the case if this age audience is the target but converts worse. We click. Here you can change bit adjustments as we've already done multiple times. Nothing new. I'll press cancel. To the visual representation, you can add not only clicks, I'll choose impressions. This way we visually see the ratio of impressions to clicks in each age category. Let's move to gender. I'll also add impressions to the display. You don't have to do this, just showing once again so you remember. Some topics are sometimes watched much more often by men or women, and this may turn out not obvious at first glance. In manicure, women predominate, which is logical, but again, he can't always understand who is there, a man or a woman. Here there's also unknown. By the way, with age, it's exactly the same story. For example, if you thought that your target audience is primarily women, and suddenly it turns out to be men, then you need to rework your ads and your site taking into account that you have a male audience. Household income. Pay attention that if you're setting up ads in the USA or Canada, then you can rely on this information. Google knows this from open sources linked to zip codes. In Europe, this information is practically non-existent due to strict data privacy laws. And there he guesses all this. In some countries, the info is more accurate, in others not. Therefore, if you're setting up ads outside the USA and Canada, then treat this information skeptically. Here I also sort by expenses and do exactly the same analysis as everywhere else. If I sort from top 10% income, I see that even with our low click price, I had impressions for this audience too. Don't rush to immediately exclude any categories. Let statistics accumulate, so you don't make it worse. Everything we just looked at was the ad group level. If you click right here, you can change ad group view to campaign view. And in our account structure, this will be even more convenient. Here we see a fuller picture, since at the campaign level, we have more data than for each ad group inside it. If desired, you can change summary chart to time series chart. But this is already messing around. Don't even know why I'm showing this. Probably so you just get distracted a bit from serious topics. Moving on. Expand campaigns and go to the ad section. Pay no attention to the status not eligible. It always gives such a status if the campaign the ad is in is on pause. Here, like everywhere, I sort by expenses. By the way, as for advertisers, the CTR metric is very important, but for entrepreneurs, it's not very interesting. An entrepreneur needs conversions. And even despite a low CTR of 2.5%, which kind of is bad, we got a conversion for just less than $14. And this is a more important metric. But I digressed. If you hover over the ad and click on the pencil icon, ad editing will open. We won't change anything here. This is all done in the editor. I just want to remind you once again that ad strength poor shouldn't confuse you at all. Everything here is just hints for beginners and nothing more. So they don't forget to fill in the fields. For example, here it recommends removing the pinned at first headline. But we know with you that this can't be done, by what logic it is written for us and why we pinned it. Closing this matter, you can also add the column Ad Strength Improvements and look at its recommendations without going inside. But everything except add 5 more site links in your ad are bad tips. I also commented on this in the lesson on adding assets. Preview ads allows you to see how ads might look. You can press this yourself if you want. But view assets details is already interesting to us. We press it. More accurately, this can be viewed in another place too. Here we are more interested in the combinations tab. Here you can see in exactly which combinations impressions were produced more often. That is how Google combined headlines, descriptions, and assets. Let's go to assets. Here are all our assets that we already added. But now there's all the statistics for them here. You can look at what performed better and what worse, and if necessary, make adjustments. Right now I have everything open as a list, but I can choose something specific. I'll open image to remind you that I didn't have them. And this is a very important element. Images very positively affect clickability. Obviously, if I had added them, that would mean Google would always show them. But sometimes it would definitely do that. And also, I don't have location added. For this you need to link Google My Business. How to do this I also showed you in the lesson about assets. I'll expand audiences, keywords and content and go to locations. If above it was a point on the map that could be displayed in our ad as an asset, then these are specific locations we targeted. The first day I advertised in a small radius and even in exact match keywords, and my CTR was just off the charts. But then I turned on the whole of Miami to show you interesting moments when analyzing locations. I can click on a specific ad campaign here or select it above. When one campaign is selected, a map is shown to us where we can visually see which location is selected for advertising. I can apply bit adjustments like in many places. But something else is interesting. If I click on the location name, a window will open for me with the ability to drill down deeper and select postal codes or neighborhoods inside my location. I'll select postal codes. And now you can analyze the results of every separate zip code. Cool, right? Sometimes we move the most successful ones to a separate ad campaign and give it maximum budget and highest bids. Unprofitable ones we add to exclusions. And those that give a result but little, we also move those to a separate ad campaign and set a not high budget and bids. Or simply put, just adjust bids in the current campaign. Or simply exclude some specific location. He'll ask again if I want to do this. But no, I don't want to. I'll return back, again press on the location for clarification, and this time select neighborhoods. Here please specific districts. The logic is exactly the same, won't waste time on this. In Google Ads Editor we added locations here in the Locations section. If something needs to be excluded, then that is done in the Locations negative section. If suddenly you add something by accident in the web interface, then here it's always convenient to check and if necessary correct. Also I want to show you the segment tool. I use it quite often. I press segment and here we have quite a large choice. For clarity I'll hover over conversions. We might have many different conversions and by default only their quantity is shown in the table. If we choose conversion action, then we'll have a breakdown by specific created conversions. I'll select conversion category. Remember in the lesson about conversions, we added conversions to various categories. And here we see that the conversion was in the section Submit Lead Form. And we now know where it came from. Now I'll select conversion action and see that the specific conversion visit thank you page worked. You can select device, network, with search partners and so on. Allows you to quickly look at data from a different angle. Click around what is there and look at everything clearly. When you log into the advertising account, by default the overview page opens. Here you can also click around. I'll add average CPC and cost for display. I can change clicks to CTR or conversions and so on. Do what interests you there. If you hover the mouse cursor, a pop-up with numbers will appear. If I scroll lower, I can view basic information. That is generally quickly you can understand what is happening in the account. And then goes a deeper analysis. Recommendations section. Here please without fanaticism. You can view sometimes it is useful, but don't do everything it says. By the way, right here in notifications, it adds key recommendations in its opinion. Let's say add images to your ads. That is needed. Add city links to your ads is also needed. But sometimes it suggests doing harmful things, like adding keywords that aren't interesting to us. But many do this, since these actions improve your optimization score, the one we have now at 92%. But this influences absolutely nothing. I'll show you this clearly a bit further. If there are very many recommendations, then not to get confused in this sheet. They can be sorted by categories. It's critically important to go to auto-apply settings and ensure that all checkboxes here are turned off. Otherwise, it'll work miracles here for you. Open maintain your ads and make sure there isn't a single check mark here. We do the same thing in the grow your business section. Everything we might need we'll add ourselves manually. Now I'll show you clearly that optimization score affects absolutely nothing. If you want to see 100% here, you don't need to fulfill its recommendations. Look, I press on the three dots and select dismiss all. I leave I will do it later and press dismiss all. I did nothing, simply rejected the recommendation, and my optimization score increased from 92 to 95.2%. Reject all the rest and it'll be 100. After the first rejection, a dismissed filter appeared for us, clicking on which we can see the recommendation rejected by us. And now attention for those who order advertising on the site. For those who need to ensure that work is being done on your advertising, what is being done there at all, because you don't need some reports from them. Right here there is such a thing, change history. Just press change history and voila, you see everything that happened in the account. Only watch the period again, select the range and it shows changes for the selected range. And also which campaign is selected. Here Google saves what, when, at what time, who made changes. Changes were made via the web interface, Google Ads Editor or the application of automated recommendations. which I advise turning off. When ads sharply start working better or worse, we look at the dates when this happened, go into the change history and look what exactly was done that triggered these changes. If it got worse, we make the ad like it was before the worsening of metrics. If better, then we remember that this was a good action. If you expand the list, then it's visible here how I added keywords in phrase match, and if you expand this one, it's visible how I deleted the same keys in exact match. Actually, I didn't delete and add separately. When I simply changed the match type in the editor, Google perceived this as deleting the old ones and creating new ones. I commented on this earlier. When showing why keys went to moderation, I specially emphasize attention on technical nuances, so you understand what and how is arranged here. Right now I was looking at the campaign search Miami Nail. You can select all campaigns, just don't forget what and for what period you're watching. There's absolutely everything here that was done. This is the best way to control someone's work directly and not look at reports, the task of which is simply to throw dust in your eyes. And also you log in and can see, holy cow, keywords checked, a pile of junk, change history. Nobody did anything. Or as it happens, logged in for literally 1 hour, made some fake campaign. Just having watched some 20-minute video, took $1,000 for this, and then nothing more, no changes are made. And every month they say, well, pay us another $1,000 besides the ad budget. Well, just such a scam really. Go into change history and look at what is happening in your account. Of course, this isn't everything that can be analyzed, but this is those 10% of efforts that will give 90% of the result. When you understand how this structure is arranged further, when you need something specific, you can calmly search in YouTube for something specific or go into Google Help, and for you this won't be instructions in a foreign language. You'll understand what is being discussed, because you generally understand this whole structure. If something is unclear to you from what I said, then I advise going through the whole course, because this video, it's being recorded as part of a playlist, as part of a free educational course on Google Ads. The course is awesome, and you won't even buy something like this for money. Here you get all this for free. Therefore definitely like. You can write a comment. In the next lesson we'll be creating a remarketing campaign on the display network. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one. Think bigger and make money.